Well, if you have been, following the media and the news, there has been a lot of talk about Trumpism or Trump effect, how it's affecting people in general, not only in New York City, but throughout the country. It affects on children and families, and how women in particular have been targeted by his campaign.
Okay, so I guess what we can talk about as professionals who work with people and help people with their issues, we can talk about some of what we're seeing, what would be kind of the impact in the current climate, this being an election season, and obviously we go through election seasons all the time, but it feels like this election season, there's a lot of polarization, a lot of strong feelings, a lot of things that are being said. And you mentioned Trumpism, so I don't know if I've heard that term yet, the Trumpism, but let's get into the effect of this kind of approach to rhetoric.
So Trumpism actually has been described in a number of ways, but one way is that his bombastic approach to campaign, and the way he targets minorities and women and people from other religious backgrounds, and accusing them as if they are others. So the message is that we need to treat them as others, as if they are not part of us. So it's a very divisive approach.
Right.
There's a great deal of stress that people have been reporting, people who come to us for help with their emotional problems. There is an increased level of anxiety, distress, and people are not feeling safe. People feel like they are being, targeted, blamed.
And so it's an endless media cycle of seeing, and every day we're seeing it. We're seeing another speech by Trump. And while one may disagree with his politics or the political party he represents, what it sounds like we're talking about here is also his style of speech and the nature, the way that he separates people out, describing immigrants as the other, describing Muslims as people to not be trusted. That's creating more of an anxiety in our culture, and we're seeing that in people that are coming in.
Well, he has been, really very vocal about, that how the media, he's fomenting, this picture of media as being not trustworthy. He wants to really challenge, the Constitution. He's talking about, if he's elected, how his opponent, Hillary Clinton, he would imprison her. He has said, that those who are followers of Second Amendment perhaps should consider, carrying arms against her. And also in his comments that he has made in terms of what his policy would be toward immigrants, targeting, Mexicans, targeting Muslims, targeting gay people, and that he would make sure to appoint those justices who would overturn, same-sex marriage, for instance. So people are feeling, increasingly that the country that they have been living and really enjoying their civil rights and other liberties that come, after you live here in this country, that they are at risk. So they are wondering that the life they are used to be living here, it's going to change. Not only just politically, but socially as well, the way we conduct ourselves. And as you know, in New York City, everybody is just from somewhere else. So we are very used to that kind of climate, environment. And I think his hatred speech, is very, it's a direct threat to our civil liberties.
Now, there's a lot of people that support him and that make excuses for him, hear the way he speaks and try to disavow some of the more negative, but I think it's been the divisive nature about it, and I think it's been the negative nature about it that he's been trying to rile up in people.
Well, while you may disagree with, some of the rhetoric and all that, the fact remains that there are issues that we need to deal with as a country, as a nation. And those issues, whether they are, geopolitical or economical, they are real. And I guess one of the things that we as a country, politicians and leaders need to really learn is that we can no longer really not pay attention to those issues. Mm-hmm. And we must actually address the anxiety and fears people who live not only in New York, but elsewhere in the South and other parts of our country. So I would say that if there is one thing that his campaign has highlighted, it is that we should not really deny those issues and should deal with them, as quickly as possible. Mm-hmm. But his approach is such where he has a kind of a very, a style which is very ruggish. His style is extremely grandiose. He uses the kind of language which is that I have done it, I have accomplished it, I am a doer. And he uses like, I'll take care of it, mm-hmm. without ever really telling us how. So I think people who like that kind of a style also seem to think that we need a leader who magically would bring some changes into their lives, economic and otherwise. Mm-hmm. And they don't really want to look into deeply into, well, what is his policy and what is his ideology and how he is going to make differences in our lives. Mm-hmm. So I think it's because people are disenchanted and people have some real issues with the existing system. And I guess it's time for our political establishment to offer real solutions to real problems.
Mm-hmm. There are a lot who believe, though, that no matter who gets elected, nothing really will change for you or I.
Well, if you look at the history, I think there is a truth to the fact that people go out and vote, every 4 years, and we elect, either a Republican or Democrat, candidate. In general, it doesn't really make any real changes in our lives. At least we don't see it. So why that is, I think it's a question that we should have actually, should have been a real target, of discussion during this campaign. But I think his campaign actually has robbed people from asking the real questions, mm-hmm. about the foreign policy, about the education, about our health and all that, which I think is a real problem. And maybe in the before the November 8th voting day, mm-hmm. Candidates begin to really focus on that. I'm afraid that it's too late, though.
No, I don't actually think they're going to focus on that in a real way. And I think I've had that feeling, too, is that no matter who's in the House, things are not necessarily going to change for you or I. But something feels real different about this time around. I think we've touched upon it before in terms of the negativity that is in the campaigning, that who is in office right now seems like it's causing some shift in our community. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you've heard it or have experienced it. There's been an increase in acts against LGBT community, mm-hmm.
bullying.
So we're seeing the stress of our communities being affected by the negative rhetoric that's in the campaigning.
Well, there's teachers have been reporting that, over the last 4 to 5 months that they have seen in classroom situations and schoolyards, the bullying, and attacking others. And I think his campaign has normalized this very aggressive approach to discussion, to a discourse, so to speak. And I guess that when kids see a kind of a successful and a powerful, man who can attack other opponents like this, who can attack women and point to their physical attributes to put mm-hmm. them down, to shame them. I guess that's a behavior that they are watching, and I think this behavior has some approval rating.
Yeah. So
many people, part of our society, men and women both, seem to think that it's okay for a very powerful, successful man to engage in this way.
Well, we've heard him actually admitting that he's famous and he can get away with anything.
Yeah, his message is that if you are successful and powerful enough, that you will get away with these behaviors, which there is a truth to. I think it's the reality is people have gotten away from all sorts of things.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time too, because clients come in, they come from both sides of the political fence, and I don't get into much politic conversation with people, but I do get into the conversation of how these leaders become symbolic representations of what a lot of people are feeling and thinking. And thinking about Trump per se, we're thinking about someone who is probably being the mouthpiece for a lot of people's frustrations. And what you were saying before is that we need to, as a society, begin to address those fears, address those issues. Right now I'm thinking what you and I as professionals who help people, what could we be doing to help our clients? And what do we do to help our clients?
As we listen to all this, the first thing is to really make them feel safe. That's the first thing, that their observations, what they are seeing and feeling are real. So validation is one aspect to it. Two, I think, is that there is a collective trauma going on in our country. It's not just individual. So I think they should realize that all of us are involved in this, and that we all, if we mobilize ourselves, and if we really begin to trust collectively our efforts, then I think we will be able to defeat whatever ism we want to call it right now, Trumpism or Trump effect. History has taught us that on so many different occasions we have gone through really very turbulent times, wars, natural disasters, all kinds of things. And I think that people should know that if we put our efforts in a right way, that there are many ways to overcome these obstacles. And I have no doubt that in coming months we will see a change that would point to optimism, that would point to we as a nation overcoming the current situation, and how all of us will be able to actually go back to living the way we are used to, which is our liberty, which is our freedom, which is our sense of the commonality that we have in our country. And all of us are going to be, I think, at the end of the day, safe.
All right. It's been an interesting conversation. I want to thank you for joining me in it. My name is Fritz Gillette.
My name is Mubashir Nasir.
And check us out on the web, getoptimalnyc.com. Take care.